They were part of one of the most beloved television families of all time, bringing comfort and tradition into millions of homes through the Waltons from 1972 to 1981. But while the show captured the spirit of love, resilience, and togetherness during the Great Depression, real life wasn't always so kind to its stars. Over the years, many cast members have tragically passed away, some from sudden illnesses, others after long battles with personal struggles. In this video, we honor the actors who are no longer with us, revealing the untold stories behind their final days and the heartbreaking losses that shocked devoted fans. Their off-screen journeys were often filled with sorrow, making their on-screen warmth even more powerful. Earl Hamner Jr., born July 10, 1923, took on the invisible but deeply resonant role of narrator in The Waltons when the series debuted in 1972, at the age of 49. He was also the creator and soul of the show, basing it on his own childhood in rural Virginia. His character, never seen on screen but always heard, became the embodiment of warmth, nostalgia, and traditional values. But behind the comforting voice and homespun stories was a man who lived a life of internal conflict and suppressed pain. Raised during the Great Depression in a large, impoverished family, Hamner's youth was defined by hunger, shame, and silence. His strict Baptist upbringing instilled guilt and restraint, leaving him emotionally repressed well into adulthood. As a child, he often felt alienated, dreaming of becoming a writer while his father pushed him toward labor. He endured ridicule for being sensitive and artistic in a world that celebrated rugged masculinity. Though he eventually became a celebrated writer, his early years in Hollywood were marked by rejection and typecasting. Many studio executives saw him as too sentimental, and he was frequently shut out of more prestigious dramatic projects. He carried a deep resentment over never winning a major Emmy, and sources close to him described his later years as paranoid and controlling, rewriting scripts obsessively and micromanaging the legacy of the Waltons. Despite a long marriage to Jane Martin, friends whispered of emotional distance and isolation in his personal life. He rarely spoke of the death of one of his brothers, who drowned in his teens, an event that haunted his writing and may have triggered decades of repressed grief. Hamner died on March 24, 2016, in Los Angeles, at the age of 92 from bladder cancer. His estate included a home in Brentwood, lifetime royalties from the Waltons, Falcon Crest, and various novels, with a reported net worth of approximately $4 million. Though he died with dignity, some say he never truly believed he was seen for who he was, forever trapped between the gentle voice he gave the world and the unresolved sorrow he kept hidden. Joe Connley was born on March 3, 1928, and began playing the role of Ike Godsey in The Waltons in 1972 at the age of 44. As the amiable, quirky general store owner of Walton's Mountain, Ike was portrayed as dependable, friendly, and slightly bumbling, a man viewers trusted, laughed with, and rooted for. Born into a financially strapped family in Buffalo, New York, Joe grew up with little encouragement. His childhood was marked by poverty, emotional detachment, and a constant sense of being invisible. He was mocked for his slight frame and stutter, retreating into books and silence. As he entered the acting world, Connley was consistently cast aside, shuffled through minor roles, and overlooked. His early years in Hollywood were dismal. He once confessed to being on the verge of suicide in the 1960s due to depression and prolonged unemployment. Though the Waltons gave him steady work, Connley never truly escaped insecurity. Off camera, he was known to be highly controlling and rigid with castmates. Some former co-stars described him as passive-aggressively undermining, often offering backhanded advice or subtly criticizing younger actors. The worst collapse in his career came in 1982, when he lost nearly all his savings in a failed television production company that was later investigated for mismanagement. In his personal life, Joe married Louise Teachin, but the relationship was far from stable. Rumors circulated about Connley's obsessive behavior, including secret surveillance of his wife's activities during their rocky years. One of his children later revealed in an interview that their father was emotionally distant and at times verbally abusive. In his final years, Connley suffered from severe dementia, spending his last days in a care facility in Newbury Park, California. He died there on July 7, 2013, at the age of 85 from complications related to the disease. His estate, valued at approximately $3 million, included several real estate properties in California. Yet a significant portion was tied up in legal disputes after his death. His children from different marriages reportedly fought over inheritance claims, suggesting a fractured legacy beneath the smiling storekeeper persona fans adored. Ronnie Clare Edwards, born February 9, 1933, stepped into the role of Cora Beth Walton Gotsey in 1975 when she was 42. Her character, overbearing, judgmental, and vain, added a comic edge to the tight-knit Walton ensemble, making Cora Beth both loved and loathed for her dramatic affectations. Off-screen, Edwards had a deeply fractured sense of self. Raised in Oklahoma by a domineering mother and a father who abandoned the family when she was 9, her early years were marked by emotional abuse and constant financial instability. Though she later crafted a persona of eccentric grace, her start in the entertainment industry was riddled with rejections and humiliations. She was once fired mid-rehearsal by a prominent director who called her unwatchable, a moment she described in her memoir as the most dehumanizing of her life. She never fully recovered from the stigma of that early failure, which followed her like a shadow. Her personal life bore quiet pain. She never married, confessed to multiple failed relationships, and in private letters admitted she believed herself unlovable. Despite no public scandals, some colleagues quietly criticized her as intensely private to the point of paranoia, citing her erratic behavior on set and unexplained absences. Edwards lived reclusively in a former church in Dallas, a symbolic refuge from Hollywood's glare, and often claimed she trusted architecture more than people. Her financial portfolio was modest but stable. She sold her LA home to flee of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and left behind a small estate valued at approximately $2 million. She died peacefully in her sleep from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease on June 14, 2016, at the age of 83. Her death went largely unnoticed by mainstream media, a quiet end to a woman whose real life was far more complex than the caricature she so skillfully played. Ralph Waite, born June 22, 1928, stepped into the role of John Walton Sr. in 1972 at age 44, portraying the steadfast and moral father of a Depression-era family. On screen, he was a rock, compassionate, steady, and wise. To fans, he was the embodiment of fatherhood. But Ralph Waite's real life was far more volatile and emotionally broken. Raised in a rigid, working-class Catholic home in White Plains, New York, Waite endured a cold upbringing dominated by a strict father and an emotionally absent mother. He spent much of his youth rebelling, only to fall into deep alcoholism in his 20s and 30s. During the early seasons of the Waltons, he often showed up to set hungover or still drunk, lashing out in moments of unprovoked anger. Crew members have recounted his mood swings, including throwing furniture on set and refusing to speak to co-stars for days. Despite these outbursts, his charisma was undeniable. Waite had once been an ordained minister but lost his faith during a crisis of identity, exacerbated by his daughter's death from leukemia, a wound that never healed. Professionally, he never regained the same success after the Waltons. Roles dried up and multiple pilot projects failed, one notably being The Mississippi, which was canceled after poor ratings despite his passion for it. Waite's 3 marriages all ended in turmoil, with court records revealing custody battles and emotional abuse allegations in private depositions that were never made public. His children, particularly from his first marriage, became estranged, and in interviews, he spoke vaguely about his regret as a father. He later ran for Congress 3 times, unsuccessfully, and critics accused him of using his Waltons fame to manipulate voters while hiding the volatility of his past. Although he later achieved sobriety and some measure of peace, he remained haunted by missed chances and unresolved guilt. Waite died on February 13, 2014, in Palm Desert, California, at the age of 85 from natural causes. His estate included a modest Palm Springs property, limited royalties from the Waltons, and sparse residuals from guest TV appearances, with a total net worth estimated at just $2 million. Mary Jackson, born on November 22, 1910, played the role of Emily Baldwin in The Waltons in 1972, at the age of 62. Her character was a gentle, wistful woman lost in memories of a long-lost love, sipping homemade moonshine disguised as the recipe alongside her sister Mamie. Viewers found her innocent charm endearing, though her naivete often served as quiet comic relief. Behind the scenes, Mary's personal story was far more complex than the genteel figure she portrayed. Born into a financially struggling household in Milford, Michigan, Jackson's childhood was marked by emotional repression and ridicule due to a speech impediment. She developed a coping mechanism of hiding behind characters, something that later fueled her desire to act. Her Hollywood career began with promise but stalled during the McCarthy era, when her husband, a suspected communist sympathizer, was blacklisted, effectively ending his career and nearly hers. Though not publicly discussed, Mary faced industry shunning during the 1950s and 60s, forcing her to survive on minor stage work. Her greatest professional failure came in 1963 when she was abruptly dropped from a Broadway production for being too old-fashioned, a humiliation she never forgot. In her personal life, though she remained with her husband for decades, their relationship was fraught with long silences and unspoken grief over their inability to have children. Friends noted that Jackson often withdrew for weeks after professional disappointments, battling undiagnosed depression in private. She died on December 10, 2005 in Los Angeles, at the age of 95 from complications of Parkinson's disease. Despite a quiet life and avoiding tabloid scandals, her estate revealed a surprisingly modest net worth of only $1.5 million, most of which came from careful savings and residuals from the Waltons. She left no children, and her passing made little media noise, quietly closing the curtain on a life shaped by hidden sorrow and quiet resilience. John Crawford, born September 13, 1920, took on the role of Sheriff E.P. Bridges in the Waltons in 1972 at the age of 52. Known on screen for his calm demeanor and moral reliability, his character often stood as a protective figure in Walton's Mountain, a subtle hero who brought justice without fanfare. Audiences adored his grounded, almost paternal presence. But behind the camera, Crawford's life was far from tranquil. Raised in a fractured household during the Great Depression, he endured a cold and dismissive father and an emotionally distant mother, instilling in him a hardened shell from a young age. His Hollywood path was rocky. Despite over 200 credits, he was twice blacklisted in the 1950s, suspected of leftist ties, which nearly ended his career. A notorious perfectionist, Crawford often clashed with directors and co-stars, especially during his work with Sam Peckinpah, who labeled him impossible on set. His greatest career collapse came in the 1980s when a personal script project he co-wrote was scrapped after being accused, never formally charged, of intimidating a producer over creative rights. His personal life was equally stormy. 4 volatile marriages, each ending bitterly, and strained ties with 2 of his 3 children, one of whom accused him of emotional abuse. He struggled privately with depression and alcohol dependency, which he masked behind a stoic exterior. Crawford died on September 21, 2010, in Newbury Park, California, from complications of a stroke at the age of 90. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at approximately $1.5 million, consisting mostly of real estate and residuals. Yet, despite decades in the industry, he died virtually forgotten, with no Hollywood tribute, as if erased from the collective memory of the very system he had once helped build. Tom Bower, born January 3, 1938, took on the role of Dr. Curtis Willard in the Waltons beginning in 1975, when he was 37 years old. As the town doctor and husband to Mary Helen Walton, Bower's portrayal brought an air of grounded intelligence and moral strength to the series. His character was thoughtful and caring, frequently caught between duty to his patients and devotion to his family. But behind the scenes, Bower's story was marked by quiet conflict and professional tension. Raised in Denver, Colorado, Bower had a strained relationship with his father, a stern laborer who disapproved of Tom's artistic ambitions. Bower spent years working menial jobs before finally getting a foothold in acting, a journey riddled with rejection and frustration. When he joined the Waltons, he hoped it would provide long-term security, but after several seasons, he dared to ask for a pay raise, an act that effectively sealed his character's fate. Rather than negotiate, producers abruptly wrote Dr. Willard off the show, sending him to a vague death during World War II. Privately, Bower was livid. Friends recalled his bitterness and sense of betrayal, which fueled a lifelong mistrust of network executives. Though never caught in scandal, he became known for his stubbornness and refusal to compromise, which some say cost him bigger roles. Bower had 2 marriages, both marked by periods of intense conflict, including a brief separation from his second wife due to his emotional withdrawal and obsession with principled work. Though he never achieved mainstream fame, he was fiercely respected in acting unions, even blacklisting himself from projects that mistreated crew members. In his later years, he lived modestly in Los Angeles, isolated but uncompromising. Tom Bower died peacefully in his sleep on May 30, 2024, at the age of 86. His assets included a small Los Angeles home, a pension from SAG-AFTRA, and limited royalties from TV work, with an estimated net worth of around $2 million. His legacy remains not just in his roles, but in the battles he fought quietly, far from the spotlight. Peggy Ray, born March 31, 1921, joined the Waltons in 1978 at age 57, stepping into the role of Rose Burton, a character whose warmth, maternal instinct, and gentle wit gave the series a comforting second wind. Viewers embraced her as a loving matriarchal figure, one who healed wounds with baked goods and soft wisdom. But Peggy's personal history was far less wholesome. Born into a troubled Los Angeles household with a gambling-addicted father and a mother prone to fits of rage, Ray grew up hiding bruises and shame behind forced smiles. Her early career was a string of assistant jobs, including working for Kay Thompson, with whom she had a dramatic falling out. It was rumored the fallout was due to Ray's refusal to cover up an affair between Thompson and a married film executive. Her entry into television came late and often involved playing the heavy-set motherly type, a trope she resented deeply. Privately, she battled compulsive overeating and severe loneliness, never marrying and estranged from her only sibling. A controversial biography later hinted at a long-term but closeted same-sex relationship she kept hidden due to career fears in conservative Hollywood. In the late 90s, Ray was quietly hospitalized for anxiety-induced heart arrhythmia, a condition worsened by years of untreated stress. She passed away from congestive heart failure on February 5, 2011, in Toluca Lake, California, at age 89. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $2 million, modest for a woman with her resume. Her estate, mostly comprised of savings and a modest bungalow in Toluca Lake, was donated to several charities, including one supporting older LGBTQ+ individuals, a quiet nod to the life she never fully got to live publicly. John Ritter, born on September 17, 1948, joined the Waltons in 1972 at the age of 24, taking on the role of Reverend Matthew Fordwick. His character initially embodied moral rigidity, stern, repressed, and pious, but over time, Fordwick's narrative softened, showing the vulnerability, confusion, and inner battles of a man trying to reconcile faith with the complexities of human weakness. It mirrored parts of Ritter's own hidden duality. Though known for his comedic charm in Three's Company and his boyish smile, John Ritter harbored long-standing emotional wounds. Raised in the shadow of his famous father, country singer and actor Tex Ritter, John lived with intense pressure to be perfect, both professionally and personally. As a child, he suffered from a facial paralysis condition and was ruthlessly teased in school, something he admitted scarred his self-esteem. Though married twice, his first marriage to actress Nancy Morgan deteriorated behind closed doors due to his alleged infidelity and obsessive work schedule. Several former co-stars privately shared stories of Ritter's struggle with anxiety and control issues on set, particularly during the later years of Three's Company, where tensions with Suzanne Summers and contract disputes brought out a side of Ritter rarely seen by the public: volatile, suspicious, and prone to isolation. His biggest heartbreak, however, came when his eldest son, Jason, entered rehab in the 1990s, a painful chapter Ritter reportedly blamed on his own emotional absence. In 2003, while rehearsing for his new sitcom 8 Simple Rules, Ritter collapsed on set and was misdiagnosed at hospital. He died on September 11, 2003, just 6 days before his 55th birthday, from an aortic dissection. His sudden death triggered a bitter wrongful death lawsuit against the hospital and treating physicians. The legal case rocked Hollywood, with conflicting medical opinions and emotional testimony from his widow Amy Yasbeck, eventually resulting in a $14 million settlement. At the time of his death, Ritter's net worth was estimated at $20 million, stemming from decades of television, film, and lucrative voiceover work. Louis Arquette was born on December 14, 1935, and began portraying J.D. Pickett on the Waltons in 1978 at the age of 43. As a factory owner, his character brought tension to the otherwise pastoral Walton universe, gruff, skeptical, and stubbornly capitalist, yet with rare glimpses of hidden morality. Off-screen, Louis was no less complicated. A member of one of Hollywood's most eccentric and controversial families, he fathered 5 children: Patricia, Rosanna, David, Richmond, and Alexis, all of whom would go on to stir their own scandals and artistic waves. But few knew of the deep contradictions within Louis's own life. In the late 1970s, during his Waltons tenure, he moved his entire family to a spiritual commune in Front Royal, Virginia, run by the Subud movement, a blend of mysticism and strict ritual. Friends later described it as a form of religious control, isolating the Arquette children and instilling a spiritual discipline that conflicted with Hollywood's liberalism. Louis later converted to Islam, adding another chapter to his inner odyssey, but not without conflict. His marriage to Marty Nowak, a poet and activist, was marked by ideological rifts and prolonged emotional distance, leading to estrangement in his final years. Professionally, Lewis never achieved stardom. Often cast in forgettable character roles and typecast as grumpy men, he resented the system that made his children famous while relegating him to the sidelines. Insiders noted his drinking problem during the late 80s, a dependency he denied publicly, but one that allegedly cost him key roles. The biggest blow to his pride came when he was passed over for a major supporting role in Pulp Fiction, a part he had lobbied for, which ultimately went to Christopher Walken. In his final years, Lewis lived modestly in Los Angeles, reportedly disconnected from most of his children, except Alexis, whose own gender transition he supported passionately despite public backlash. Louis Arquette died of congestive heart failure on February 10, 2001, at the age of 65. His estate was valued at approximately $1 million, largely consisting of residuals and modest property holdings. Wilf Brimley was born on September 27, 1934, and stepped into the role of Horace Brimley, the no-nonsense blacksmith of Waltons Mountain, in 1974 at the age of 40. His character embodied rugged masculinity, old-school grit, and a quiet strength that anchored the rural community, traits that mirrored Brimley's own stoic public image. Viewers connected with Horace's salt-of-the-earth demeanor and his deep respect for tradition, making him a symbol of small-town integrity. But behind the handlebar mustache and gravelly voice was a far more conflicted man. Born into poverty in Salt Lake City, Utah, Brimley dropped out of school in 8th grade and bounced between jobs, from wrangling horses to being a bodyguard for reclusive businessman Howard Hughes. His tough upbringing bred a mistrust of authority and an unshakable sense of independence, but it also left emotional scars. Despite his iconic roles in Cocoon, The Thing, and The Natural, Brimley battled Hollywood's elitism and remained an outsider. He was notorious for storming off sets, berating directors, and clashing with producers over creative control. One of his darkest professional scandals came when he was accused of verbally abusing a young co-star on set in the early 90s, a claim that quietly derailed a high-profile role in a Clint Eastwood project. Brimley's private life was equally fraught. He married once, but the marriage was rocky, plagued by long absences and emotional distance. He fathered 4 sons, but insiders claimed he was cold and unapproachable, leading to estranged relationships with some of his children. Known for his hardline conservative views, he sparked backlash in his later years for opposing animal rights legislation, including publicly defending cockfighting, which caused outrage among fans and animal advocacy groups. He died on August 1, 2020, in St. George, Utah, at age 85 from kidney disease. At the time of his death, Brimley had a net worth of around $6 million, earned through a blend of acting, advertising deals like Quaker Oats and Liberty Medical, and investments in real estate. Robert Donner, born April 27, 1931, became one of the Waltons' most colorful supporting figures when he debuted in 1972 at age 41 as Yancey Tucker, the eccentric moonshiner and local mischief maker. His portrayal was unforgettable. Tucker was unruly, unpredictable, and strangely endearing, often providing much-needed comic relief in the otherwise serious family drama. In reality, Donner's life was as quirky as the characters he played. Raised in a strict Catholic household in New York, he rebelled early and joined the Navy at 17 to escape a troubled home. After his service, he drifted through odd jobs, short-order cook, janitor, rodeo clown, before finally landing roles in B-movies. Donner's big break came through his friendship with Clint Eastwood, who cast him in several westerns. Though loved for his offbeat charm, Donner developed a reputation in the industry as difficult in bursts, known for walking off sets when things didn't go his way and demanding rewrites for even minor lines. Behind the jovial exterior was a man who battled undiagnosed bipolar disorder for much of his life, only seeking treatment after an explosive episode during filming in the 1980s. His marriage to writer Jill Sherman endured, but not without drama. Close friends recall fiery arguments, particularly when Donner's mood swings veered toward destructive behavior. In private, he also struggled with gambling addiction, once losing $40,000 in a single Vegas weekend. Though never publicly disgraced, these issues quietly limited his career. Still, he remained a fixture in guest roles, with a fan base that adored his zany charm. Donner died of a heart attack on June 8, 2006, in Sherman Oaks, California, at the age of 75. His estate included memorabilia, modest investments, and residuals from a vast number of TV appearances, with a total net worth estimated at around $1.5 million. He left behind a legacy of laughter and trail of stories that reflected a life lived on the edge of brilliance and chaos. Ellen Corby was born on June 3, 1911, and took on the role of Grandma Esther Walton in The Waltons in 1972 at the age of 61. On screen, she was the unshakable moral compass of the family, stern but loving, fiercely loyal, and deeply spiritual. Raised by strict Norwegian immigrant parents in Racine, Wisconsin, Ellen endured a cold, emotionless upbringing, expected to suppress her emotions and submit to discipline. Her early life was defined by silence, both in expression and support. She moved to Hollywood alone, taking secretarial jobs and eventually breaking into acting through background roles. Her real breakthrough came late in life, and for decades she lived with bitterness over being overlooked, passed over due to what studios called her plainness and mannish demeanor. Ellen's career was also shaped by a secret that haunted her personal and professional life: a long-term lesbian relationship with fellow actress Stella Lucetta. In an era when homosexuality could destroy careers, Ellen and Stella maintained a carefully constructed facade. They lived together from 1954 until Ellen's death, but Ellen's attempts to remain hidden included denying the relationship publicly and even fabricating stories about a late husband. In 1976, a massive stroke nearly ended her career. Though she bravely returned to the show, insiders said the network considered replacing her, and she was treated like a liability rather than a legacy. Beyond the camera, Ellen was known to suffer from depression, exacerbated by decades of secrecy, industry sexism, and the loneliness of living a double life. She never married, had no children, and became increasingly reclusive in the 1980s. She continued to practice transcendental meditation, hoping to find peace, but according to close sources, she battled chronic pain and regret for the last decade of her life. Ellen Corby passed away on April 14, 1999, in Los Angeles, aged 87, from natural causes. She died with few visitors and little public fanfare, her death barely mentioned in industry circles. Her estate, valued at an estimated $5 million, included lifetime earnings, property in Encino, and a valuable collection of rare Hollywood photographs. Will Geer, born March 9, 1902, took on the role of Grandpa Zebulon Walton in 1972 at the age of 70. His portrayal of the wise, witty, and earthy patriarch provided a moral compass and warm humor that grounded the Walton family's emotional world. Beloved by audiences, Zeb was a symbol of timeless wisdom and gentle resilience. But behind the affable screen presence, Geer's life was laced with turbulence and contradiction. Born into a poverty-stricken Indiana household, he endured a childhood shaped by silence, emotional repression, and early loss. As a young man, Geer was ostracized for both his political ideals and his sexuality, the latter being something he carefully guarded until midlife. His career was catastrophically disrupted during McCarthy era, when he was blacklisted for refusing to testify before WAC. He lost all major roles, was evicted, and relied on gardening to survive. His most public scandal wasn't just political. His open bisexuality in Hollywood's closeted 1950s world stirred controversy, especially his affair with activist Harry Hay, whom he both loved and eventually left due to political disagreements. Known for his manipulative intensity on set, Geer was often described as controlling behind his jovial mask. His most severe career failure came when he was publicly removed from a lead role in a Broadway play following clashes with producers and erratic behavior attributed to untreated depression. His personal life was equally volatile. He had a strained relationship with his children, particularly his daughter Ellen, who both admired and feared him. Friends noted that Geer kept lovers, colleagues, and family at emotional arm's length, often retreating into his botanic garden for isolation. He died of respiratory failure on April 22, 1978, at age 76 in Los Angeles. At the time of his death, his estate was modest, about $1 million, mostly tied to Theatricum Botanicum, his labor of love. Though he passed with little financial grandeur, his legacy remains one of fierce conviction, artistic brilliance, and personal mystery. Helen Cleve, born on January 6, 1907, stepped into the role of Mamie Baldwin in 1972 at age 65, bringing to life a character rooted in tradition, eccentricity, and stubborn Southern pride. Mamie, with her grand speeches and childlike belief in the medicinal power of moonshine, became a fan favorite for her sincerity and oddity. But Helen's real-life story veered far from her genteel TV image. Raised in rural South Dakota, Helen's early life was harsh. Her father was a failed businessman with violent tendencies, and she often bore the brunt of his rage. She escaped into radio as a teenager, using her voice to craft a different identity, but even that came with its demons. She was known among casting agents as temperamental, having once stormed off a radio set and refused to return for weeks. Her Hollywood career was quietly riddled with battles. She was nearly sued in the 1950s for allegedly stealing a role from a rival actress through what some claimed were backdoor studio favors. Though she eventually carved a niche for herself in character roles, she was never fully embraced by the inner Hollywood circles. Her personal life was equally turbulent. Her first marriage ended in scandal after her husband was arrested for embezzlement, something Helen never publicly acknowledged. Her second marriage, while longer-lasting, was said to be cold and distant, with her son later estranged from her due to her emotional unavailability, according to a 1999 interview he gave. She suffered multiple strokes in her final years, rarely seen in public after 2000. Helen Cleve died on December 28, 2003, in Los Angeles, at the age of 96 from natural causes. Her net worth, estimated at around $1 million, reflected a lifetime of work but little extravagance. She owned a modest home and has small pension from the Screen Actors Guild. Her death, like her life, passed mostly unnoticed by the Hollywood elite, but to fans of the Waltons, she remains an eccentric icon cloaked in faded Southern elegance. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from the Waltons who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.